Hi, welcome to Digging to China. I'm Dong Sheng. Today, let's delve into a serious discussion about issuance of ultra long-term government bonds by the Chinese Communist Party that began last week. This event carries significant implications for China's economy and politics, and it will also impact the lives of ordinary Chinese citizens in profound ways. From what I have observed in China's financial and political discourse, there seems to be a reluctance to fully address this matter. It's not that they are unaware or unable to articulate it clearly, rather there appears to be a hesitance to do so. Today, we aim to gain a comprehensive understanding of this major political and economic event, along with some of the significant ramifications it may entail. Let's explore 5 key aspects of this topic. Firstly, last week saw a remarkable display of grandeur as the Chinese State Council announced the launch of these ultra-long-term government bonds. The magnitude of this announcement was unprecedented, capturing widespread attention. Leading the charges was Ding Xuexiang, a member of the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee's Politburo Standing Committee and Vice Premier of the State Council, Vice Premier He Lifeng, Zhang Guoqing, along with State Councilors Wang Xiaohong, Wu Zhenglong, and Chen Yiqing were also present. It's a rare sight to witness such a unified effort from the top echelons of the State Council. During the deployment meeting, Premier Li Qiang underscored the significance of issuing ultra-long-term special government bonds. He emphasized that this decision made by the Party Central Committee is pivotal for advancing China's modernization and achieving national rejuvenation. Premier Li highlighted the importance of strategic foresight and a comprehensive approach in supporting key national initiatives and security capacity building projects. He stressed the need for coordinated efforts in both investment and construction, integrating projects with the necessary reforms. Premier Li urged all regions and departments to align their actions with the decisions of the Party Central Committee, emphasizing the importance of deepening understanding and unity of thought. Next, let's explore the significance and the specific context surrounding the issuance of these ultra-long-term government bonds. According to information provided by the Chinese Ministry of Finance, there are 3 key aspects to consider. Firstly, this issuance offers bonds with 3 different maturity periods: 20 years, 30 years, and 50 years. Traditionally, bonds with terms exceeding 10 years are deemed long-term, while those surpassing 20 or 30 years are considered ultra-long-term. Secondly, the duration of this year's issuance by the CCP is notably extensive. It commenced on May 17th and will continue until November, with multiple batches being issued over this period. Lastly, the sizes of the ultra-long-term bonds vary. The 20-year bond amounts to 300 billion yuan, the 30-year bonds to 600 billion yuan, and the 50-year bond to 100 billion yuan. Moving on to the third aspect, let's delve into the specific policy directives associated with the issuance of these ultra-long-term government bonds by the CCP. According to explanations provided by the party, these bonds have been endowed with 3 distinct functions. Firstly, unlike ordinary government bonds, these ultra-long-term bonds are excluded from the public budget. In other words, they do not contribute to the fiscal deficit. During this year's CCP convened sessions, it was determined that the fiscal deficit should not exceed 3%. However, according to calculations by American economists, China's fiscal deficit rate this year may be around 3.8%. The difference lies in the treatment of these special bonds. While they should technically be included in the deficit, the CCP has exempted them. As a result, these ultra-long-term government bonds do not count towards the deficit. Secondly, what purposes do these bonds serve? Premier Li Qiang explained that they are primarily allocated for significant national strategic initiatives and enhancing security capabilities in key sectors. What do these statements statements entail. The director of the National Development and the Reform Commission (NDRC) elaborated, emphasizing support for areas including technological innovation, integrated urban-rural development, regional coordination, food and energy security, and high-quality population growth. In essence, these cover the key investment sectors of the government. Thirdly, a significant aspect of these bonds is their applicability for local government use. In other words, the proceeds from selling ultra-long-term government bonds aren't directly utilized by the central government. Besides investing in strategic projects, most of these funds are channeled to local governments. Can local authorities utilize this money to address local debt issues? Absolutely. It's explicitly stated that these funds can be utilized to alleviate local debt burdens and bridge financial gaps for local governments. While not explicitly earmarked for debt repayment, these funds can be allocated to activities associated with the debt service, freeing up other resources for that purpose. Thus, local governments can utilize these funds for debt servicing, offering temporary relief to regions facing significant debt challenges. However, there is a foreseeable risk. Once these funds are distributed to local governments, they might be allocated to a myriad of miscellaneous projects and serve as emergency reserves. This deviation from the intended strategic priorities outlined by Premier Li Qiang is due to the initial permission granted by the central government for flexible fund usage by local governments. Lacking the assurance of dedicated use, this policy design raises intriguing questions about its sustainability and effectiveness. The fourth perspective I'd like to share is regarding the situation that ordinary people, as typical Chinese citizens, may face in response to the CCP's issuance of ultra-long-term government bonds. To begin with, the announcement of last week's issuance of ultra-long-term government bonds marks only the initial step. Over the next few years, there are plans to consistently release these unique bonds. According to conservative estimates, the total volume of these ultra-long-term government bonds could reach 5 trillion yuan. Such a development will likely exert considerable influence on the renminbi exchange rate and consequently impact the purchasing power of Chinese citizens. Furthermore, the issuance of ultra-long-term government bonds not counted as a part of the deficit won't immediately cause fiscal distress for the government. There is an idiom that aptly describes this situation: living off borrowed money. How does the CCP explain this approach? According to China's National Development and Reform Commission (NDRC), it's explained as follows. Early in his tenure, President Xi Jinping set a goal for GDP to double by 2035. However, unforeseen events like the pandemic disrupted this trajectory. During the pandemic's 3-year span, China's actual average compounded growth rate was only 3.8%. To achieve President Xi's target of doubling GDP by 2035, China needs an average GDP growth rate exceeding 5%. This requires additional efforts to boost GDP, necessitating extra investment in various sectors. Currently, ordinary Chinese citizens and a private enterprise aren't investing significantly, so the responsibility falls on government investment. How much government investment is required to stimulate GDP? The NDRC calculated that issuing an additional 1 trillion yuan of ultra-long-term government bonds annually could contribute to GDP growth by 0.2% to 0.25%. With this yearly increment, GDP could reach 5%, potentially achieving the goal of doubling GDP by 2035. Look at the logic of the NDRC. It's backward. They are saying that because they want to double GDP, they need fiscal spending to stimulate it. This explanation is quite ridiculous. Why does GDP have to double? In today's world, especially in developed countries, why hasn't any country set the goal of doubling GDP? Do they not understand economics or governance? Because GDP itself is not a measure of wealth, nor is it a measure of economic growth. It merely reflects a certain economic temperature. Increasing GDP isn't difficult, is it? Just build and demolish your house repeatedly and the GDP will increase, the economic temperature will rise, but the wealth won't. Now the CCP is making economic temperature the country's top development goal, but what significance does it have? Especially after emerging from poverty, pursuing GDP has little meaning. Presently, the CCP continues to prioritize GDP growth, leading to the issuance of ultra-long-term government bonds. While GDP may rise, so does the debt burden passed on to future generations. How will they manage to repay it? That's not a concern for Xi Jinping. Even he enjoys longevity, his lifespan is limited to 100 years. When he's no longer around, he won't have to contend with the repercussions. Thank you for watching. Please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.